A multi-million-dollar initiative to expand preschool options across the state, Ready Keiki aims to open dozens of new preschool classrooms next year, with hundreds more being created over the next decade. With the clock already ticking, how close is the state to meeting its first goal? And will it be enough to fill the gaps in availability and affordability facing many families? Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Yanji Denise. Many experts agree early education is an important building block for children, but Hawaii is lacking when it comes to affordable preschool options. The administration has $200 million allocated by the legislature last year to change that. The governor has tasked Lieutenant Governor Sylvia Luke to lead the effort called Ready Keiki. So what is the plan and will it be enough to meet the state's needs? We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email or call in your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and on the PBS Hawaii Facebook page. Now to our guests. Lieutenant Governor Sylvia Luke is spearheading Ready Keiki. Its goal is to create more than 400 preschool classrooms in the islands by 2032. The plan builds upon groundwork laid by the Lieutenant Governor while she was a state representative. Chad Keone Frias is the Executive Director of the School Facilities Authority. He's been with the Department of Education in various roles since 1993. The authority is responsible for the development, planning, and construction of public school capital improvement projects. Keopu Relitz is the Director of Early Learning and Health Policy at Hawaii Children's Action Network, a nonprofit advocating for the safety, health, and education of Hawaii's Keiki. In addition, she brings a personal point of view to the conversation tonight as the mother of 3 young children. And Representative Justin Woodson represents Central Maui and is also the chair of the State House Committee on Education. Over the past few years, he's helped to lead efforts at the legislature to expand preschool access here in the islands. Thank you all for being here tonight. It is wonderful to have this to talk about. $200 million is certainly a lot of money. We have high hopes for where this is going. Keopu, I want to start with you and just to lay the groundwork so we have a background of where we are right now. What is the current status of eligibility or availability of public preschool or any kind of preschool?
So if you're looking at what families go through, right? So if any family is looking for childcare, whether it's from birth through 5 or kindergarten entry, by and large, most people have to get on wait lists, right? And if they can get on a wait list or if they can get off the wait list, typically they're looking at maybe or maybe not being able to afford it. So oftentimes we see that barrier is not just like an availability. So for say 3 and 4-year-olds, it's just over 50% capacity. We have capacity for just over 50% of 3 and 4-year-olds. The younger you get, the less capacity we have. Same with affordability. Affordability for 3 and 4-year-olds is probably around $13,000 to $14,000 on average annually. And then the younger you get, the more expensive it is. So when I talk to families, typically, those are kind of 2 of the interchangeably big variables that they talk about. Can we get off the wait list? And if we can we afford it? And so that
and we have this graphic that you shared with us. These numbers are pretty astounding. If you look at this, the average monthly tuition that your agency shared with us, I mean, $1,700 a month for infants. Who can afford that?
Not many. I mean, you're looking at, so what's interesting is you're looking at sometimes upwards of $20,000 a year, and there doesn't tend to be as much assistance for families the younger you get, right, or the younger the child is. And so we see that the need is from birth through 5. And if you even look at some of the folks that are actually in the classrooms, they don't even make enough money to afford that childcare. And so I think that's one thing. If we look at folks who are making $13 to $17 an hour, which is the average rate for the childcare workforce, they can't even afford infant care. And so what does it mean for a family if you are having to face $1,700 a month for childcare, but you're only bringing home $2,000? You have to make that impossible choice. And so what we see oftentimes is families having to make that impossible choice, again, sometimes based on if it's available and available where they need it and if it's affordable.
So, Lieutenant Governor, tell us about Ready Keiki and how it hopes to address this issue.
Yeah, Yanji, thanks for inviting us on this important subject matter. And, I have to say, everyone one of us around this table is part of the Ready Keiki initiative, and thanks to the great work of Chair Woodson, as chair of the Education Committee, he has laid some of the groundwork on what we are launching. The Ready Keiki initiative is very different from what the state has done in the past because it is looking at a mixed delivery. It is recognizing the importance of private preschool, at the same time also adding a lot of public school classrooms. Currently, if you look at the 3 and 4-year-olds, there are 35,000 3 and 4-year-olds, but about 18,000 are going to preschool. Out of the 18,000, 17.9 or close to it are enrolled in private preschool, and only about 900 or 1,000 classrooms are in the public sector. So you see the disparity, and a lot of the private preschool, as Keopu mentioned, it's costing in the upwards of $1,500, sometimes $1,700 a month, and that's equivalent to somebody's rent. So the fact that the legislature, thanks to efforts of Chair Woodson, Chair Kidani, Donovan, and many others, for them to prioritize preschools and the expansion of preschools and committing a large amount, $200 million, is huge. And for us to be elevating this discussion, not just for us and for a lot of the families, but for the future, it's so important because it's such a social equity and it's a social justice issue.
Chad, you are tasked with really putting the shovels in the ground, building the classrooms themselves. Tell us about how that $200 million will be spent, how much of it is dedicated solely to facilities, and what that looks like. I know you're also under a deadline with that money.
Yeah, correct. Again, so thank you for having us and elevating this issue, like Lieutenant Governor said. The time is right for this, right? We have support from Rep. Woodson and over in the Senate, and for Lieutenant Governor to come up with those numbers, she's spot on. Those numbers are accurate. It just tells us that the time is right. What the opportunity SFA has here is to take that $200 million, look at our agency partners, our program partners, and see if we can get as many classrooms built, and like you said, in this steep time frame, spread out across the state. So really the goal is to open in the cadence with our program partners. And I think your question was, how much of that will we spend? We will spend it all. We will build as many classrooms as we can across the state of Hawaii to tackle this issue of pre-K for every child.
And when you look at, when we think about building classrooms, we think about building new structures, sort of what is your approach? Because we know that it is time sensitive. Are you talking modular? Are you talking about transforming existing classrooms, new buildings? What exactly is this mix?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're planning to do all of that, right? So we've prioritized the first classrooms being in the neediest area and having the readiness to open and the willingness to open. So those first classrooms will be remodeled or renovated classrooms. Most of these, in fact, the first 11 will open a year ahead of schedule. We increased the timeline there, and we want to open August of this year for those first 11 classrooms. We do have projects in the queue, one prong with 3 other classrooms and another with 7. We could possibly have 21 classrooms in a much elevated timeline, maybe in a year and a half. And again, those are renovated classrooms or remodeled. We are looking at site-on-grade builds or modular builds, not the same portable classrooms that we saw in the past, but quality modulars placed on sites or installed on various sites across the state. We have a list of 40, one list of 55 that we could possibly get rolled out for August of 2024.
That's pretty exciting. That's pretty exciting. That's pretty soon. And we'll want to dive deeper into where these should go. Representative Woodson, I want to bring you into the conversation. You represent Maui. Let's talk about access when it comes to not just folks on Oahu, although we know that there are some rural parts of this island, but we know that the neighbor islands, part of the challenge is really distance and building classrooms in areas where there might not even be a private preschool to choose from. Tell us about your concerns about where these should be built.
Sure. Well, first, thank you for the opportunity to be here. And I just want to say that Lieutenant Governor has always been very gracious, but she is the connective tissue that has lifted this whole project up, and is why it's running. She was very involved in Act 46, and she is why we are here today. For Maui and the neighbor islands, I would say that the challenge is trying to identify the geographic location of where actually the need is. And what I mean by that is if you actually live up country, as an example, on Maui, but you work in Kahului, which is where most people work, then you probably need to establish more preschools and pre-kindergartens in that particular area. And so there's a concerted effort to make sure that we figure out where the geographic need is, and then we map out from that to make sure that we service the entirety of the island.
Okay, there's the issue of the classrooms themselves, and then there's the issue of the staffing. So tell us about your concerns. Will we have enough? You know, we can have all the buildings, but if we don't have the teachers, then we really are nowhere.
So before I get to that question, I wanted to follow up on Chair Whitson's comments. That is a huge paradigm shift for the state of Hawaii. Exactly what he said. We're not just, in the past, what we have done is build preschools where the population live. But as he mentioned, even if the population live in remote areas, it's where Kahului or Lihue or downtown Honolulu, it's really the work centers that we want to focus. So it is a huge paradigm shift between the School Facilities Authority and the Department of Education recognizing that we don't just build classrooms where people live anymore. We're planning to build classrooms at workstations, at workplaces, and that's a shift in this mentality and shift of how we're trying to solve this problem through recognizing the issue and then what is the best pathway for parents and the workforce.
Yeah, let's all commute together, right?
Exactly.
It makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. And then now, you know, when we're looking at workforce, one of the things that many of us we don't do is we look at problems just kind of in compartmentalized silos. So we have $200 million and we determine we're going to build as many classrooms as we can. But even if we build 465 classrooms, if we don't have 465 teachers and we don't have 465 teaching assistants, then we're just going to be building empty classrooms. In fact, on the private side, it's about 65% capacity, full capacity, not because there are not kids able to go into the classroom. There's a wait list, but they don't have enough workers to fill even the private seat. So I think for us, it's really important that we have the teaching pathway. One of the change that has just been done, the University of Hawaii, in conversation between all of us, between all the stakeholders here, we had a conversation with the University of Hawaii. In the past, to be a preschool teacher, you almost had to do a double major. So you had to do, the University of Hawaii had a pre-K to third grade degree, but you couldn't just have that degree. You have to double major in a pre-K to third and then kindergarten to 8th grade. Because the intensity of that program, a lot of people drop out and they opt to just do the K to 8. And so that system resulted in a lot of folks not wanting to continue in the pre-K degree. But part of it was because there weren't classes for them to go into the workforce. But after talking to the Dean of College of Education, he mentioned that there were a lot of students who were interested, and if we end up building and then bifurcate the 2 degree and make a single degree, he thinks there's an interest. So in the meantime, while we're building, we're working with the university, working with Chaminade to figure out how do we tailor these degrees so that students who are interested, or young adults or adults who are interested in a preschool pathway can get the degree in an expedited way.
You know, you were
jump in
please,
real
yes.
quick? So I think one important thing is we have a lot of the things, whether it's the work that Keone is doing, the work that Representative Woodson's doing, Lieutenant Governor is doing, is it's like the both and, but it's like times a million, right? So there's so many things that have to be moving at the same time. So we have to work on that recruitment pipeline. And at the same time, we have to work on retention. So what I like to say is, like, if we create this pipeline, it's no good if there's a leaky bucket. And the problem with the workforce that we have is not just that we need to get more folks so that we can fill the 400 classrooms. We're also looking at making sure that we're keeping folks in the workforce. Between 2018 and 2020, we lost 20% of our workforce. That was pre-pandemic. And so we have to make sure that when we have folks that are in preschool classrooms, they can feel like they have a living wage, that they can stay in those classrooms. That's not just good to make sure that they stay in the classrooms and then we can build the pipeline for the new classrooms. It's good for kids too, right? Having that making sure that we have educators that are there year round and are consistent and can make a career of that. And so I just one of the things that's really important to remember, and why it is wonderful to see like all of the different stakeholders doing things at the same time, is that there's so many ands, right? So it has to be recruitment, it has to be retention, and then it has to be facilities, and so on and so forth. But I do want to mention that the problem of the workforce did not start with the pandemic. It was prior to that. And so there has to be efforts to do things like raise wages.
Well, $13 to $17 an hour,
Right.
what you were bringing up earlier, I mean, that doesn't, for the kind of credentialing that the Lieutenant Governor is presenting, that doesn't really seem to match. Is there a move to try to raise some of those wages?
So one of the wonderful things, again, and Representative Woodson actually was one of the sponsors for a bill to help pilot a program that would raise wages for the child care workforce, or early child care and education workforce. This is looking at the community-based programs. What's wonderful is in the EOEL program, we actually have pay parity with kindergarten teachers and K through 6 teachers. But it's on the community-based program side that we see that very low wage. And so there has been a move within the community, the early childhood community, to identify that we need to raise these wages to retain the workforce. And so we have been working with legislators to start to pilot some of those programs, because the idea is we incubate the program now, so that when Keone's classrooms are built, as Lieutenant Governor moves on some of these other pieces, we'll start to have that program ready so we can roll out for the entire birth through 5 continuum.
Let's bring in, oh please, go ahead.
And also, just to add on to what was being said, and so, like you said, there's different ways in which we need to address the wage gap between the public sector teachers and the preschool teachers, which is on the private side. And there are plans within DHS to actually increase the subsidy amount for our families to $1,500 for accredited programs and $1,000 for non-accredited programs. They can take that money through Preschool Open Doors and actually apply it to those schools. The schools have more money available for them, and they can hopefully pay their teachers more.
Yeah, let's talk about Preschool Open Doors. We've got a graphic on that. If you would just lead us through a little bit of that. I think we have a graphic on Preschool Open Doors and also on Child Care Connection Hawaii. And I know that this is really your wheelhouse here. You know, tell us about, for people who don't know, this is basically a subsidy so that you can attend private preschool, a voucher, if you will, so that you can get into some of these slots. And under Ready Keiki, this is going to be expanded. Is that right?
That's my understanding. Yeah. I know that, so just so for folks who may not be as familiar with the two types of programs, Child Care Connection Hawaii is funded by this federal Child Care Development Block Grant and is open to birth through 13 years old. So you can actually use it for before and after school care, for example. Whereas Preschool Open Doors is the state-funded program that right now is at 11 million, right, Lieutenant Governor? And I know that there's plans to expand Preschool Open Doors, so maybe I'll hand it over to the Lieutenant Governor.
So part of the Ready Kiki initiative is to expand the Preschool Open Doors subsidy from 12 million to 50 million. So Preschool Open Doors services about 1,400 children. What we're hoping is expansion of Preschool Open Doors from 12 to 50 will service a lot more kids, but at the same time, we will be increasing the subsidy. As you saw in the slides, the average amount of subsidy given to a family is around $700. Potentially, as Chair Woodson mentioned, we will be increasing the subsidy to about $1,500, and then it will be on a sliding scale for different income levels. So people on the lower income scale will get a larger amount, but people in the higher income scale will get a lower amount.
Yeah, and Representative Woodson, in the past, this idea has really been pushed back by some educators, especially public school educators, who feel like the money should all go to the public school programs as opposed to being dispersed to also private programs. What are your thoughts on having this sort of mixed approach, that some of the money does go to private institutions as well as public institutions?
Yeah, we are in an all hands on deck moment, and so we need a portfolio of offerings. And ultimately, it's for the families to decide. We think that's the best approach. And so for some, the pre-kindergarten program might be most appropriate. For others, they prefer Hawaiian immersion. For others still, they prefer a hybrid system between Hawaiian immersion and learning English. And for others, they have some kind of specialized want for their education that could be better found on the private sector side. And so our job is to try to identify what the need and the want is per any particular area and to try to fulfill that need. But the short answer is that we need both.
I want to bring you in on this. We have a question from Alana and Kiki. Would the state be looking to acquire properties or land to build new preschools? And this goes into what the Lieutenant Governor was talking about really building schools where people work as opposed to just simply where they live. So for Alana and Kiki, are you looking to acquire new land or are you just building on existing property?
Yeah, so in our first tier that I talked about, 11 and possibly 9 more, we're doing this on DOE campuses and charter schools, but we're definitely looking at properties to build where there is the so-called desert, where there isn't seats for public pre-K. And we're actively doing that right now. We have a couple of identified properties where we'll be doing just that type of work.
And I know you said that you're looking at 11 to open by August, which is very exciting. Can you give us an idea of where those might be without, you don't have to tell us the actual zip code, but, are those all on Oahu? Are they throughout the state?
So those first classrooms were picked from the neediest areas, and they are on all of our islands, at least one classroom on every island and multiple classrooms around the state. So yes, they'll be spread out.
Good answer. We need it on all islands. Not just on Oahu.
In fact,
Absolutely.
there are 2 on Maui. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on Oahu identified, 1 on the Big Island, 1 on Kauai.
Yeah, well, I think our viewers are statewide, and so they'll be happy to hear that. Mike in Kailua has a question. Once the Ready Keiki program is implemented, would it bring down the cost of preschool? We saw those numbers that she presented. Do you think that costs will go down for families?
We are hoping that the individuals, by providing preschool accessibility, public preschools will clearly be free, but at least even on the private side, by increasing the subsidies under Preschool Open Doors, expanding the access under Child Care Block Grant, which is a child care, the connection funding, we're hoping that it will bring down the cost for everyone.
And in that increase, there's another question here. Can we expand subsidies for middle-class families that do not currently qualify? In that expansion,
so I think that's one of the big things, and another thing that I think is important to remember is that this is building on work of the past. It's building on work for the last few decades. It's building on the work of that. When you were representative, now Lieutenant Governor Luke, Representative Woodson, when they passed Act 46, it is meant to be incremental, right? And so we can start in one place and we can keep going. One of the things that I think is important to remember is that we can start with this baseline and then move toward, if the vision with Act 46 was universal access, we need to make sure that access is meaningful for families. And so again, it goes back to those 2 major barriers, availability, and that's making sure that there are seats available where families need them. And one of the things that I wanted to throw in as we talk about where do families need them, it's interesting to look because if, I talk to friends on the Waianae Coast here on Oahu, and they want their childcare programs in town where they work. Then I talk to friends on the windward side of Oahu, and because I'm from the windward side, so we tend to live in multi-generational housing. So we want it actually close to where Tutu can pick up the kids. So it just depends, and it's knowing and having the all hands on deck to know where the needs are and to increase that availability. And then I think a lot of the hope for advocates and for those in the early childhood communities, we can take that next step toward bringing down the cost. And when HCAN likes to think about universal access, we're looking at low cost cost or no cost programs for nearly all Hawaii's families. And we're not going to get there next year. Like, I just have to be real. Like, we're not going to get there next year, but that's the dream. And I think the nice thing about this initiative is it brings folks to the table to get us there, and one step at a time toward that universal access goal.
Okay, and then as you ramp up, as you open more facilities, what is the sort of time frame? We know we said 2032 at the start to kind of get everyone access, but it's sort of as you open as you go as opposed to wait till the end. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so you're right. We're trying to figure out that cadence on how to open, right? And we're selecting sites that have this readiness. But to date, EOEL has taken on the challenge of public pre-K, and we've done 50 classrooms. We have around 50 public pre-K classrooms out there. We're trying to expand in the next 2 to 3 years and double that, and keep doubling as we go along until we get to our number. Of course, as we get better at it, we may be able to open a lot quicker. But for now, just to kind of take a bite and chew and take a bite and chew. I think it's a really, really big step that our program partners, with the help of Lieutenant Governor, to get the first 11 opened ahead of time. And if we can do that, I think we can see a faster cadence, if you will, and more classes open. I did want to add that to the point of building where families want to send their kids closer to their workforce, we are being very intentional in building facilities, perhaps on high school campuses, looking at high school campuses to help address the workforce issue, in building these classes on the university campuses to help address the workforce issue. So we'll be filling seats and bringing the facilities where we hope we can start to recruit younger, have our high school kids start to work in these facilities through their early college programs, et cetera. So that's just another way we're being intentional here.
And the Executive Office of Early Learning has a budget request to increase their capacity by about 50 classrooms, additional classrooms compared to what they have now. And so everyone is on board. We're working together. We want to make sure that we provide these opportunities for all of our families.
You know, the Lieutenant Governor talked about some of the steps UH is taking. This one is from Kailua. I wonder if you'll take this one on. Is there any way to fast track the education process by offering an associate's degree at community colleges? You know, he spoke about perhaps having high school students or, you know, current college students. I would imagine that they wouldn't be the lead teacher, but perhaps they could be a teacher's assistant. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. You can become a teacher. You can become a teacher assistant by taking a CD coursework that can be done at the community colleges. By the way, we have a Hawaii Promise program that allows individuals to go to school for free. So that's a way that you can take advantage of the opportunity. But even expanding on that question, you're right, we need to do things to facilitate and increase the pipeline. One of the initiatives that we have is a early learning teacher stipend program that will allow individuals that want to go through the full teacher program that's approved by a state agency to do so, and the state will pay for those courseworks. And so we have a variety of different offerings. We're trying to make sure that we provide more TAs, but also teachers in the public sector and also the private sector.
Okay, I want to take us back just a step. You know, I think we can all agree that preschool is beneficial for children. You were an educator at one point, of course, a district superintendent, a complex area superintendent. Tell us about the difference that you see in the kids who have experienced preschool and those who haven't. I mean, why is this so important?
Yeah, that's a great question. When you're a principal and you come walking into a classroom, you can tell kids that had quality upbringing, not just in public pre-K. Some have great parents at home that they could stay with, but you definitely could point out the kids that benefited from preschool. It doesn't matter whether I was in Ka'u or closer to town in Ke'au, you could pick them out pretty easily. And I'm not talking just in kindergarten. In third grade, you can pick that out. It just takes so long to catch these kids up that don't have these experiences. So,
yeah, expand on that. Tell us about the outcomes that we see.
Yeah, so what's wonderful is for pre-K is you're not just learning, like there absolutely is the foundations of literacy, of math. We talk about things like object permanence, right? And that might be like a fundamental developmental skill that if your kid's not getting it, you might want to talk to your pediatrician. But we forget that that's also the start of math. That's how kids understand math, one-to-one correspondence. That's how they start to understand math. So there's those like what we think of as school readiness, but what's I mean, I laughed because I was like, you really can see, because one of the big kind of areas that preschool education provides is development in social emotional skills. So we see kids learning how to handle their anger. We see kids learning how to resolve conflict, how to just be a kid around another kid. My 11-month-old, like, I feel like he thought he was an adult for so long, and now he's finally in childcare, and he can like figure out what it's like to play and play appropriately. And those are skills that if you look at the outcomes, yes, there's stuff on testing and being able to go to college, but even just, I think there was a study that showed that if a child went to a quality preschool program, they're more likely just to apply to college. And that's huge, right? Because that shows resilience. That shows the ability to weather stress. And so when we talk about pre-K education, it is fundamental for what we think is K through 12 and higher education, but it's just life skills. It's setting kids up to be engaged and curious, civically engaged people. And it's awesome.
Let's talk about what this school day is going to look like. We know that we have a staffing challenge here. When a parent drops the child off, will this include after-school care? What is the vision, at least to start?
Yeah, so I think you're describing the difference between the public model and the private model. And the reason why this is the Ready Keiki initiative is a mixed delivery, where we are looking at building on the public model, but at the same time keeping the private model intact. Because as you and I recognize, a public school, you have to pick up your child at 2:15. And if you live far away from work, a lot of people, especially working families, don't have the ability to pick up their child at 2:15 and then send them home, and sometimes they would be home alone. On the private model, they could be open as early as 7 a.m. and provide services until 6 p.m. or later. So I think, while we are opening preschools, we have to be mindful what the workforce need, and which is, the ideal situation, because we're not just only looking at preschool, the ideal situation is working with some of the service providers about providing after-school care, maybe maximizing the federal CBD child care block grant to provide before school, after school, transportation as well. I think we have to look at the entire package, because the thing that we don't want, and Chair Whitson knows this, and Keopu, who has also worked in EOEA, the thing that we don't want is build preschools on the public side and it not be filled.
Mm-hmm. I doubt that would happen, but if the school day does end at 2:15, that can be hard for working parents. Please go ahead.
Yeah, can I add to that? So when SFA is designing these classrooms, and when we start construction of these classrooms, even though charter has certain requirements, charter schools have certain requirements, or DOE campuses have certain requirements, or EOEL, we are designing and building for full licensure. We're building so that these classrooms can be operated by anybody that's accredited or has license. And we're hoping that this solves that problem. If the day for public pre-K ends at 2:15, that we could start to have those conversations about a provider coming in from 2:15 to 5. So we're not building the minimum, we're building to maximize all of these licensure requirements.
So the idea would be then you have a contractor who comes in and takes care of the afternoon.
At least to start that conversation, but we can't start the conversation if we don't have the facilities that allow for that.
And how does that look different than how do you build for that versus building the other kind of model that you talked about?
Well, I think you build a preschool experience, but you build to the licensure requirements. You actually have a list in front of you and you check every box, even the ones that are exempt, you check them anyway, to the extent possible. There may be a classroom here or there where we just can't do it and we need to open, and that could probably happen, but that's not what we're aiming for. We're aiming for full licensure with no exemptions so that this can be operated by any license.
This is something that I think everyone agrees is necessary, and I would imagine that people have thought this was necessary for some time. So what's different now?
Even if we think this is a no-brainer, it has been a very challenging and difficult journey. I think just from our history of where the conversation has gone, I think the problem that the state and state administration and state government has taken this resolving this issue was just kind of a one-size-fits-all. So when several administrations ago, they looked at a CONAM to look at, okay, all private model. Clearly that didn't pass, and that was not something that the public supported. And we maybe looked at trying to ramp up just on the public model, and that didn't work either, because you cannot ignore the needs of what's happening on the private side. So I think that's why what we're doing now through the Ready Keiki initiative is so optimal, because it's bringing the private voices, it's bringing many of the sectors of the private or the public departments, and we're working on the pathway. We're not just looking at construction, we're looking at the workforce build out. How can we make sure that we start at the high school level and maybe do a teaching assistant? We have so much successful models at Waipahu High School. We had several kids graduating from Waipahu High School with not just a high school diploma, but with an AA. So what we're trying to do is perhaps at Waipahu High School or other high school, when they graduate, they can have that AA certificate from teaching assistant. If they want to be a preschool teacher, then you just need 2 additional years to become a preschool teacher. And that's something that the University of Hawaii is already starting to look at. So they're working with the community colleges on all the islands about starting a teaching assistant pathway through the university community colleges.
And this endeavor is just, let me just say, this endeavor is just so important because it is about preparedness. And when we look at high-performing systems globally and across the country, one of the components that they have is that their kids enter into kindergarten ready to learn. And so by providing these high-quality early learning opportunities, we know that our kids are going to be off to a good start. So that is what we're doing here, and we hope that our families will take advantage of it, because it's not only about preparedness, which again is the primary objective. It's about how do we better support our families. I was talking with my friend. I ran into her. She is married with 2 kids. She lives in Hawaii. They chose that area because of the schools. One of their children are in 3rd grade. The other one is in preschool. She disclosed to me that they're having a hard time. They are $700 in deficit month after month after month. So imagine if we could provide a subsidy for her and her family. She can not only provide for her family better, she has less stress, they have less stress, and their child could potentially have a high quality early learning opportunity. So it is the entirety of all these things why it's so important for us to move forward with this.
Yeah. And if I can jump in, I think another very key difference this time, I shouldn't say this time, I actually think there's been a lot of work over, and without that work, we wouldn't be where we are today. But one, I think, key golden moment, component that makes this a golden moment is there is over year, we're seeing more investments, right? So the Lieutenant Governor talked about the $200 million that she and Rep. Woodson got through the legislature last year. We're talking about an expansion, more money annually to preschool open doors, making sure that we get providing for early childhood care and education is not cheap. As we can see with families struggling, right, with your friend who is $700 in the hole every single month, it is not cheap. And so I think seeing that folks are ready and saying this is going to cost money, and we're ready and willing to put our money where our values are. And then in addition to that, I think another difference is coming around this understanding that it has to be this multi-component solution. And so one of the things that I haven't seen when I look over the past efforts is a kind of a broad-based understanding that we need to work on the workforce at the same time we work on everything else. And so I think that is all coming together to create a golden moment, because we see that there's work on building facilities, there's work on increasing investments, there's work on building the pipeline, there's also work that a lot of folks in the early childhood community are doing to raise wages, to improve retention of the early childhood workforce. So I think there's a lot of things coming together to really create a golden moment here.
Yeah, and when you have that kind of synergy, you know, what the Lieutenant Governor was talking about with Waipahu High School, if anyone's ever had an opportunity to visit that school, it is truly amazing to have, they have all different kinds of career pathways there sort of in action. Do you envision actually putting any of these facilities on those campuses so that you could have that direct pathway right there?
Absolutely, absolutely. That is the plan, is to start perhaps even at Waipahu, because they're so far ahead of the game. But schools like Waikea with their career academy models, and you see career academy schools all across the state. So we want to get one done and see it spread from there. But we can't wait and not do that. It has to be. We got to get our high school kids thinking about this as a real profession. Because it's so new, it might not be looked at as the honorable profession. So we need to do it. I mean, it is the greatest work, being a teacher, and it's the hardest being a pre-K teacher, I can tell you that much.
There's a question here from Jane in Kahului, and Lieutenant Governor, I wondered if you could take this one on. If these new schools are public and private, who oversees them and holds them accountable? So, you know, there is this question of accountability. Chad was talking about this sort of hybrid where you might have the public school in the day and then the private provider in the afternoon. How would that work?
So for the public schools, it will be within the jurisdiction of the Executive Office of Early Learning. So statutorily, they have jurisdiction over all current preschools, and they will continue to have jurisdiction over any new preschools that are built. On the private side, it will be up to the individual providers. You know, the Department of Human Services does the licensing on accreditation and making sure that they fit the requirements that are mandated by both the federal government and statutory requirement. But it wouldn't be one system that oversees all. Executive Office of Early Learning will do the private side or public side, and then on the private side, it will be the different providers.
Okay. There's a question from Jin in Honolulu. I wonder if you could take this. I don't know the answer to this one. How does the Head Start program relate to these new efforts on universal preschool in Hawaii?
Head Start's a wonderful program. It is federally funded, by and large, by grants to private providers. So Parents and Children Together and HCAP are the two that I know on Oahu. There's also their counterparts on other islands. Head Start is a model, so they are like the quintessential community-based nonprofit program. It has, I just want to share that it's a long history, several decades at this point, lots of good outcomes, and it really is a model program to bring in the supports that families need, not just like in the classroom, right, to have those wraparound supports. But it is an option that, say, so if Keone folks want to build something on a campus or in an area that maybe is not on a campus, but maybe isn't ripe for EOEL or a charter school to take on, Head Start could come in and do that. So at this moment, there are a number, I don't know the number, but there are tons of Head Start classrooms already on DOE campuses. And so that's another model where we actually could see even more synergy between that public-private partnership.
Okay. I want you to put your finance chair hat back on just for this next question. So we have the $200 million, and we're largely devoting that to a lot of facilities build, along with some of the other efforts that you're talking about. What's the next tranche of money that's needed? I mean, how is this going to move forward?
Yeah. So even with the $200 million, the estimated amount for a new classroom was about $2 million, and a new, renovated classroom was $1 million. And because you know, being former finance chair and making sure that we maximize the amount that we spend on the number of classrooms, thanks to the efforts of SFA and the Department of Education, we are probably looking at reducing the cost of construction from $2 million all the way down to $500,000 because there are fabulous people in Department of Education who are moving ahead, and thanks to Keone, we're trying to maximize the $200 million and try to build as many as we can. Going back to the question about Head Start on Kauai, there was a Head Start program at Kilauea, and they stopped the program, because the classroom that the Head Start program was in, it was so termite eaten that they had to close down, and it was full enrollment, and you just feel really bad for these families. So Keone stepped in, and we, through the Ready Keiki initiative, is taking on that Kilauea Elementary, and that will be part of the 11. So they will be going in and renovating that Head Start classroom.
Well, that's very exciting and good news for those families. How did you get it down to $500,000 if the estimate is so high?
So I didn't get it down to 500,000. Let me just be very clear. Lieutenant Governor is correct that the use of the DOE's protocols and some of the people there over in OFO, A.S. Tanaka, Kurt Otoguro, Kitayashi, came together. We just really worked together and used their program. And so they did most of that and getting the numbers down.
I asked because it's so rare in construction.
Exactly.
We're having all these conversations about the rail and the stadium and all these projects, and the estimates never go the other way.
So to Kiopu's point, we always think this is a new start, but it's not. They've been doing this work for a long time. These are real numbers. The DOE went in on 10 classrooms about 3 years ago. So these are the actual numbers that they had for remodeling these classrooms, and we're taking that same approach using pre-qualified small contractors or their job order contracting system and running it that same way. We've put a few fancy spins on it because we have some money to make a preschool experience. And again, we're trying to build we don't want it to look just like a renovated classroom. They set the bar pretty high, try to create a preschool experience that can meet all the licensure boxes so that we have multiple ways to provide for this service.
Okay. Representative Woodson, Dan and Hilo asked about how many children, and this might be more appropriate for Chad, but let's give it to you first. About how many children do you think would be in these new classrooms? What will the head count be? How many kids are we actually going to be able to serve?
Well, as it was indicated, we have about 9,300 3 and 4 year olds that need these high quality early learning opportunities. And so you can take for the Hawaii Island, about 20% of that will probably be needed for that particular island. But the idea, again, is to provide these opportunities for all of our Keiki across the state.
And how big are these populations going to be?
So when we designed these classrooms, we designed the classrooms for a population of 20 per classroom. Around 950 square feet is the minimum amount, indoor space, exclusive of bathrooms, and that's for 20 students. So you can just do the math and keep adding to how you get to 465 till you get to the number of 465 classrooms to reach our 9,000.
That's the magic number. We want to keep it to 20 students per class.
Yes.
And so if we have 20 students per class, how many educators do we need in those classrooms?
So you definitely need one licensed teacher per class, and then you need a teacher aide per class.
One of the things that it's once our kids get old enough where they can go use the restroom by themselves and all these things that we kind of forget is that you can't leave a 3-year-old alone in the classroom like you could maybe a 12-year-old. So if a teacher needs to go and use the restroom themselves, you can't just leave a room full of 3-year-olds, right? So we always have to have those kind of that pair of teachers to go in, and I think that also leads to some of the standards, the quality standards that Representative Woodson has been such a big champion for.
I wonder, you said you don't want to build all these classrooms and not have them not be taken advantage of. Because these resources have not been available at full capacity for so long, do you think there will be a culture shift here in Hawaii about the buy-in for parents to send their kids to school so early?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the fact that we're talking about it, this is being elevated not just here, but nationally. Recently, President Biden was talking about how all 3 and 4 year olds should have access to preschool. And we're talking about these issues. And finally, not just on the state level, on the national level, they're elevating the discussion of the need for pre-K for 3 and 4 year olds, the need for childcare services, the need to ensure that working families can send their kids to a quality preschool and so that they're safe while they're at work. For us, for the legislature to invest $200 million without even knowing a plan. A lot of times what happens, even, stadium or rail, you got to have the plan and then you go to the legislature and you ask for the funding. But because the legislature believed the importance of committing a large amount to preschool and to construction of preschool without seeing a plan. They said, okay, here's $200 million that we're going to commit. So now it's on us to ensure that we spend the $200 million correctly, and we try to squeeze as many classrooms out of the 200, because before we go back to the legislature and ask for more money, we have to, and as a finance chair, former finance chair, I would be asking those same questions too. How did you spend your money? How did you maximize it? Did you try to minimize the cost? And we've already shown that, hey, you know, instead of a $2 million classroom, we're trying to squeeze it down to 500. But it is going to be a cost item, as we all talked about, Keopu talked about. It's not just about construction. We have to make sure that we pay the teachers. So in addition to the $200 million in our budget request this year, we're coming in with $13 million to make sure that we pay for teachers and equipment. And so that's going to be on a yearly cost. And as we build more classroom, it will be incumbent on the legislature and the administration and as a community to go back and ask for funding to make sure that we fund all the teachers' assistants, the equipment, and the necessary things that the kids need.
I wonder what you hear from your constituents. Do you think that this will need to be not necessarily sold, but that you will need to make the pitch that, hey, 3 is not too young to go to school?
I think that everyone is pretty much on board. I mean, what I hear in my community is that there is simply not enough opportunities. And so there is a need for preschools, there's a need for pre-kindergartens. And so I think if we build it, they will come.
What's interesting is that there is a big benefit to doing things the way that are being done, right? That incremental. We think that it will just happen, but I just want to throw in there that New York City opened up universal pre-K for 3 and 4-year-olds, and just in the winter, 40,000 seats went empty, and they cut back the program. But I think one of the benefits is where we are doing it at an incremental level. So as 11 classrooms here, 50 classrooms there, we can actually start to understand what the community needs, what families need, so that when we do build it, we know that they're going to come, and we know that it's going to be a place where they need it and that they're going to be able to afford it.
And again, there's a lot of interface between the communities and the legislature. We actually go out to the communities to see what the need is. So there's already that communication happening. So we are going to establish, again, early learning opportunities in areas where people actually want them, so that when they do, when they finally are built, they will be there for them to take advantage of.
Manny in Manoa has a question. What would the application process be like with such little space available? Would it be like summer fun, or parents have to camp out overnight? We see that every summer on the news, right? To get a spot for their kid. How is that going to work?
So this is just like kindergarten enrollment. So as soon as a preschool classroom is open through the school and through the principal, they will do outreach. I think Keone, as a former CAS, went out into the community and told people about it and recruited individuals to sign up for preschool. So it will be an announcement of the opening, and it will be through registration.
We have just a few minutes left, but I wonder, you said that you've got those 11 almost ready to go. What is it like for you when you walk through those doors now, given all the work that has led up to this, all of your experience working in education, and knowing that perhaps by August, kids are actually going to be in there?
Yeah, I mean, it just feels really, really, really good. But to be honest, when I walk in there, I just miss it. I miss being a principal. I miss being a teacher. That's the honest answer. But it's been a long time coming. We've been working on this for 10 years. As Lieutenant Governor said, 10 years ago, having 20 classrooms in EOEL, 6 of them came to my complex area, which was awesome. But yeah, it took some educating parents. They did not want to release their kids at first, or they thought those kids were too young. So it took a little bit of work to see that as a community we've gotten to this point, and we're confident when these classrooms are done, they'll be filled. The principals are confident they can fill them. They're looking for the clientele already. You look in the car when the 7-year-old's dropped off and you see a 3-year-old and you ask, how old is? Okay, here's an application. So, I mean, it just feels really nice that we'll get 11. What feels better is that we have a cadence to get to 23, to get to 40, to get to 50, and double our public pre-K offering in such a short period of time. So.
How would you encourage the public to stay involved on this issue because it is so important?
Yeah, so on our website, we have the Ready Kiki information. But one of the things that is really great about this Ready Kiki initiative is the amount of philanthropic support. In addition to the Castle Foundation and Hawaii Community Foundation and Commit to Keiki, they are also chipping in. And so one of the things that they are helping us build is a public web portal. What the web portal will show is a data on where the classrooms are, where actually all the private preschools are. It's going to show the timeline of construction, and this is something that, as state government, we have never seen. So we're very excited to build this web portal and announce the opening of it.
Fantastic. What would you say to folks who are tracking this tonight?
I would just say, please stay engaged, and it's to a benefit to not only your family, but it's to the benefit of a larger community, because if we can do a better job of preparing our community members, then all of us are better off, and we have a stronger Hawaii.
Okay, we've got about a minute left. I want to give you the last word. We mentioned at the top that you have 3 kids. One we know is 11 months old. Do you think that your child will be able to take advantage of this program? Do you have that optimism?
I do. And I think what's more important and why I've been in this work for the last several years is not for them to get to school during their lifetime. It's so that when they have kids, they don't have to go through what I had to go through and what my mom had to go through. Finding care, just finding the one person that can take care of their kid at that moment, being able to afford it, not having to choose between a paycheck and pre-K or early childhood education. And so I think the important thing is, like Representative Woods had said, we're looking for the long term and for a full community benefit. And so we're looking for this to be a lifetime investment that will pay dividends generation over generation.
Okay, wonderful discussion tonight. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for joining us. Of course, we do thank our guests, Lieutenant Governor Sylvia Luke and Keopu Relitz, Chad Keone Furious, and Representative Justin Woodson. Next week, Insights will be taking a break, but we'll be back the following week to talk about affordable housing. With Oahu's median home prices hovering around $1 million, is it possible? Please do join us then. I'm Yanji Denise for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Aloha.